Surviving as the top Hollywood PR fixer and crisis manager requires a specific set of skills. You must be absolutely ruthless, possess a terrifying understanding of human psychology, and be entirely unfazed by scandals that would make a normal person weep. So when Olivia is transmigrated into a gritty, 1920s-style human crime novel as the doomed, disposable daughter of a rival gang leader, she doesn't panic. She wakes up tied to a chair in a smoky speakeasy basement with the city's most ruthless crime boss holding a revolver to her head. Instead of begging for her life, Olivia critiques his villain monologue, informs him that his recent string of public assassinations is an absolute public relations nightmare, and offers him a deal. Put the gun down and she will make the police commissioner disappear from his ledger using nothing but the morning newspaper. They say love is unpredictable, and today's story proves it. Welcome to Romance Crave Stories, where every episode is full of passion, secrets, and emotional twists. Let's begin. Olivia's last memory of the modern world was her phone buzzing with a notification that her most difficult client, an A-list actor with a terrible temper, had just been arrested. She stepped off the curb to hail a cab, missed the speeding delivery truck by a fraction of an inch, and woke up with the sharp, biting scent of cheap cigar smoke and damp concrete burning her nostrils. Her head throbbed. Her hands were bound behind her back with coarse rope, tying her to a heavy wooden chair. As her vision cleared, the dimly lit basement came into focus. Standing a few feet away was a man who looked like he had stepped directly out of a noir film. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a pristine three-piece charcoal suit without a single wrinkle. His dark hair was slicked back, and his eyes were a cold, dead, terrifying shade of ice blue. He was slowly, methodically screwing a silencer onto the barrel of an M1911 pistol. A rush of foreign memories hit Olivia's brain. She wasn't the feared Hollywood fixer anymore. She was Isabella Rossi, the spoiled, notoriously foolish daughter of the Rossi crime family. And the man loading the gun was Dante Blackwood, the leader of the rival syndicate. Isabella had supposedly been sent to poison him, failed miserably, and was now scheduled for an immediate, quiet execution. "Any last words, Miss Rossi?" Dante asked. His voice was a low, raspy whisper that barely carried over the sound of the dripping pipes, yet it commanded absolute authority. "Or shall we skip the dramatics?" Olivia didn't scream. She didn't cry. She stared at the silencer, then looked up at Dante's pristine suit, and let out a long, heavy, deeply irritated sigh. "First of all," Olivia said, her voice entirely steady, "the lighting in this basement is doing you absolutely no favors. If you're going to execute the daughter of a rival boss, you wanted to send a message. This just looks sad and entirely uncinematic." Dante froze. The gun wavered. The two massive, armed enforcers standing by the door exchanged highly confused glances. "What?" Dante whispered, his cold eyes narrowing. "You heard me," Olivia said, sitting up straighter in the chair. "You are Dante Blackwood. You own the docks, the speakeasies, and half the judges in this city. But right now your public image is in the gutter. The Daily Tribune called you a thuggish street rat, on page 4 yesterday. Do you know what happens when the public thinks you're a thug? The mayor gets pressured to crack down. The police raid your warehouses. Your profit margins tank." Dante stepped closer, the barrel of the gun lowering slightly. No one had ever spoken to him like this. Usually they were weeping, vomiting, or offering him money. "If I shoot you," Dante murmured, tilting his head, "your father will wage a war that will stain the streets red. That is my message." "A war is expensive and entirely terrible for optics," Olivia countered sharply. "If you shoot me, you're the villain. The papers will run a front-page spread of my grieving father. You will be public enemy number 1. But, if you let me walk out of here alive, and hire me as your head of public relations." She paused, offering him a sharp, brilliant, entirely ruthless smile. "I will have the Tribune printing a story by Sunday about how your syndicate just anonymously donated $20,000 to the city orphanage. I will rebrand you from a street thug to a mysterious, philanthropic businessman. The mayor won't be able to touch you because the public will love you. I will make your enemies look like the actual villains without you having to fire a single bullet." Dante stared at her. The silence in the basement was deafening. He looked at the gun in his hand, then looked back at the woman tied to the chair who had just confidently critiqued his murder aesthetic. Slowly, Dante reached into his suit jacket. He didn't pull out another weapon. He pulled out a silver switchblade, stepped behind her, and sliced the ropes binding her wrists. "You have exactly 48 hours to make me a philanthropist, Miss Rossi," Dante whispered, his ice blue eyes gleaming with dark, Dangerous curiosity. If you fail, we resume this execution. Understand? Olivia rubbed her chafed wrists and stood up, smoothing her skirt. Please, give me a telephone and a pot of coffee, Olivia smirked. I'll have you nominated for Citizen of the Year by Tuesday. Should we start Chapter 1 with her aggressively rewriting his press releases while his hitmen watch in confusion? Or would you like to tweak her profession again before we continue? Chapter 1. The executive office of the Blackwood Syndicate was located above a bustling, gin-soaked speakeasy. It was a beautiful room, furnished with dark mahogany, leather armchairs, and enough hidden compartments to arm a small militia. Olivia sat behind Dante Blackwood's massive desk, entirely unbothered by the bloodstain on the Persian rug. She was currently aggressively stabbing the keys of a heavy iron typewriter, a lit cigarette resting in a crystal ashtray beside her. Standing on the opposite side of the desk were Dante's two top enforcers, Marco and Tommy. They were terrifying, mountainous men who wore tailored suits and carried Thompson submachine guns in violin cases. Currently, they looked like two scolded schoolboys. Dante leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his charcoal vest, watching her with that icy, unnerving stare. Let me make sure I understand this, Olivia said, ripping a sheet of paper from the typewriter and waving it at the enforcers. The editor of the Daily Tribune wrote an editorial calling Mr. Blackwood a menace to civilized society. Your brilliant, strategic response was to leave a dead, rotting codfish wrapped in newspaper on his front porch. It's a Sicilian message, Marco grumbled, crossing his massive arms. It means he sleeps with the fishes if he writes another word. It means you lack imagination, Olivia snapped, taking a quick drag of her cigarette. And more importantly, it makes you look like uneducated thugs. Do you think a severed fish head is going to stop a journalist looking for a Pulitzer? It's just going to confirm his bias and make him dig deeper. Dante pushed off the doorframe and walked slowly toward the desk. And what does my new spin doctor suggest we do to a man who insults my family in print? We kill him with kindness. Public, highly visible kindness that makes him look like an absolute idiot for ever doubting your character, Olivia stated. She slid the freshly typed sheet of paper across the desk. Dante picked it up, his cold eyes scanning the crisp ink. For immediate release, the Blackwood Foundation announces $20,000 endowment to the city orphanage. In response to the recent, deeply troubling editorial published by the Daily Tribune, Mr. Dante Blackwood would like to extend his sincerest apologies that his legitimate business ventures have been so grossly misunderstood. To demonstrate his unwavering commitment to the prosperity of our great city, Mr. Blackwood is establishing a foundation for destitute youth. He firmly believes that children are the future, and no child should sleep on the streets. Mr. Blackwood cordially invites the editor-in-chief of the Tribune to personally present the check to the orphanage directors this Sunday. Dante finished reading. The silence in the office was absolute. You want me to give $20,000 to orphans, Dante said, his voice a dangerous, quiet rasp, and invite the man who insulted me to take the credit. I want you to buy a $20,000 shield, Olivia corrected, leaning forward and resting her elbows on the desk. If he refuses to show up, he looks like a heartless monster who hates orphans, and the public turns on him. If he does show up, you get photographed shaking his hand. He will never be able to write a bad word about you again without looking like a massive hypocrite. Marco leaned over Dante's shoulder to read the paper. Boss, it's a trap. But with money instead of bullets. Exactly, Olivia smirked. It's called PR, gentlemen. Now Tommy, I need you to hand-deliver this to the Tribune office. Do not break any kneecaps. Do not glare at the receptionist. Say good morning, hand her the envelope and leave. Tommy looked at Dante for permission. Dante stared at Olivia for a long, calculating moment. He had built his empire on fear. He had never considered building it on public adoration. Do it, Dante commanded softly. Chapter 2. By Friday morning, the Blackwood Syndicate was the talk of the city, and not for their usual bootlegging operations. The Tribune had printed Olivia's press release on the front page. The public was utterly fascinated by the idea of a ruthless mob boss possessing a secret heart of gold. But Olivia's Real test arrived at 2 a.m. on Saturday. The heavy doors to the speakeasy office slammed open. Dante walked in, his charcoal suit smelling strongly of gunpowder and smoke. There was a smear of soot on his jaw, and his ice-blue eyes were burning with a lethal intensity. Marco and Tommy followed, looking significantly battered. Olivia, who had fallen asleep on the leather sofa waiting for them, bolted upright. What happened? she demanded, instinctively grabbing her notepad. The Maroney family, Dante growled, pouring himself a neat glass of scotch. They tried to hijack a shipment of our imported whiskey down at Pier 4. We engaged. Define engaged, Olivia said, her pen hovering over the paper. We shot the place to pieces and threw a stick of dynamite into the warehouse. Marco offered helpfully, dabbing a cut on his forehead with a handkerchief. The whole pier is currently on fire. Half the precinct is on their way. Olivia closed her eyes and took a deep, steadying breath. Right. Okay. The police are going to find a burning warehouse, bullet casings, and a destroyed pier. The Maroneys will leak it to the press that you are starting a gang war. It is a gang war, Dante said coldly, gripping his glass. I will not let them steal from me. You can have your war, Dante, but you cannot have the blame, Olivia said, her mind working at 1,000,000 miles an hour. She marched over to the telephone on the desk and picked up the receiver. Operator? Get me the night desk at the City Chronicle. Yes, I'll hold. Dante frowned, setting his glass down. Who are you calling at this hour? The competition, Olivia said. The Chronicle hates the Tribune. If I give them an exclusive scoop before the police even release a statement, they will print whatever narrative I hand them. The line clicked. Olivia's voice instantly shifted from tired and irritated to a breathy, frantic tone of civic concern. Yes, hello? Night editor? This is a spokesperson for the Blackwood Foundation. I am calling to report a terrible tragedy. Yes, down at Pier 4. The Maroney family just deliberately set fire to a derelict warehouse. Dante and his enforcers stared at her, completely dumbfounded. No, Mr. Blackwood wasn't engaging in a shootout, Olivia lied smoothly, twirling the phone cord around her finger. He was inspecting the property. He recently purchased that derelict pier with the intention of tearing it down to build a state-of-the-art community center for the shipyard workers. The Maroneys, who operate an illegal gambling ring nearby, felt threatened by the neighborhood cleanup and violently attacked Mr. Blackwood's construction surveyors. Marco's jaw dropped. He mouthed the words construction surveyors to Tommy, who just shrugged, completely lost. Yes, it is an absolute shame, Olivia continued, her voice dripping with sorrow. Mr. Blackwood's men bravely defended themselves and managed to escape, but the community center site is in ruins. Please, send a photographer immediately. The public needs to know who is really trying to destroy this city. She slammed the receiver down and turned back to the room. All right, Olivia ordered, pointing her pen at the bewildered hitmen. Tommy, get down to the county clerk's office the second it opens and file the backdated deed for Pier 4. Marco, hide the Tommy guns and grab some blueprints and hard hats. Put them in the trunk of the cars. She turned her gaze to the terrifying, blood-soaked crime boss. And you, Olivia said, walking right up to Dante and using her handkerchief to wipe the soot off his sharp jawline. You are going to look deeply traumatized for the cameras tomorrow. We are spinning this as a devastating blow to urban renewal. Dante looked down at her. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of this woman was intoxicating. She had just taken a massive, highly illegal mob shootout and turned him into a victimized real estate developer in under 3 minutes. You, Dante murmured, a genuine, dark smile finally touching his lips, are significantly more dangerous than a loaded gun, Miss Rossi. Perception is reality, Dante, Olivia smirked, tapping his chest with her pen. Now go wash the gunpowder off your hands. We have a press conference at dawn. Chapter 3. The Sunday edition of the City Chronicle hit the newsstands at 6 a.m. By 8 a.m., every diner, barbershop, and street corner in the city was buzzing with the headline. Philanthropist's dream reduced to ashes. Maroney Syndicate suspected in vicious arson attack on Blackwood Community Center site. Dante Blackwood stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his office, holding the newspaper. He read the article 3 times. It detailed his heartbreak over the destroyed blueprints and included a heavily dramatized quote from Marco, who was identified as the head of construction and safety. Maroney called the mayor an hour ago, screaming that I blew up his gambling ring, Dante said, not looking away from the paper. Do you know what the mayor told him? Olivia didn't look up from her ledger. She was currently organizing a press list. Let me guess. He told Maroney to stop harassing legitimate businessmen. He told him that if he stepped within 50 feet of Pier 4 again, he would send the National Guard, Dante corrected, turning to look at her. A rare, genuinely amused smile played on his lips. Maroney has double the men I do. He has owned the docks for a decade. And you crippled him with 50 cents worth of ink. Brute force is temporary, Dante. Public opinion is permanent, Olivia said, finally setting her pen down. But Maroney isn't going to just take this. He's bleeding money and he's humiliated. He will try to retaliate, which means we need to put him on the defensive permanently. Marco, who was currently nursing a black eye and feeling very proud of his new title as head of construction, leaned over the desk. So we hit him now? While the cops are watching his warehouses? No, Marco. We don't hit him. We ruin him, Olivia corrected. She pulled a sleek, unmarked black folder from her satchel. I spent yesterday afternoon having tea with the mayor's secretary and the wives of 3 prominent judges. Do you know what women do when they drink gin out of teacups, gentlemen? They gossip. She opened the folder, revealing several blurry, but highly incriminating photographs. Don Maroney relies on the Italian voting bloc and the Catholic Church for his political immunity, Olivia explained, tapping the photos. He portrays himself as a traditional, God-fearing family man. But according to my sources, Don Maroney has been keeping a mistress in a luxury penthouse on Fifth Avenue. A mistress who happens to be a showgirl from a rival club. Dante walked over, looking at the photographs. And you want to send these to his wife? His wife? Olivia scoffed. Please. His wife probably already knows. I'm sending these to Miss Penelope, the city's most ruthless society gossip columnist. By tomorrow morning, every politician who relies on the Catholic vote will drop Maroney like a bad habit to avoid the association. His political shield will evaporate. Tommy, the enforcer who usually preferred a shotgun to conversation, looked at Olivia with genuine, unadulterated fear. Boss, Tommy whispered, side-eyeing the PR director. Remind me to never, ever make her mad. Chapter 4. The Grand Astoria Hotel ballroom was a glittering sea of diamonds, champagne flutes, and the city's political elite. At the center of the room stood a massive, heavily photographed banner reading, "The Blackwood Foundation for Destitute Youth." Olivia stood near the grand staircase, wearing a stunning emerald green silk gown, holding a clipboard that dictated the evening's narrative down to the minute. Beside her stood Dante. He was not wearing his usual dark, intimidating charcoal suit. Olivia had forced him into a bespoke, perfectly tailored midnight blue tuxedo. Without the shadows and the cigar smoke to hide behind, the crime boss was undeniably, devastatingly handsome. The sharp angles of his jaw, the piercing ice blue eyes, and the quiet, coiled power he radiated had half the women in the ballroom fanning themselves. He also looked like he wanted to murder someone. I feel ridiculous, Dante muttered, his jaw clenched as a photographer's flash popped nearby. I am a businessman, Olivia, not a show pony. You are a public figure and public figures smile, Olivia instructed without moving her lips, maintaining a bright, pleasant expression for the room. Shoulders back. The editor of the Tribune is approaching at 3 o'clock. Remember your lines. Mr. Sterling, the balding, deeply nervous editor who had called Dante a street thug just a week ago, approached tentatively. He was flanked by 2 photographers. Mr. Blackwood, Sterling cleared his throat, sweating profusely under Dante's icy gaze. I must say this is a magnificent event. The check you provided for the orphanage. Dante's instinct was to loom over the man and threaten his kneecaps. He felt Olivia's stiletto heel gently, but firmly, step on his toe. Dante inhaled sharply, forcing the murderous intent down. He extended a hand, his lips curving into a perfectly manufactured, charmingly raspy smile. Mr. Sterling, Dante said, his deep voice practically vibrating with manufactured warmth. The honor is entirely mine. Without your passionate editorial shedding light on the plight of the city, I might never have realized how desperately our youth needed help. I owe this foundation's creation to you. Sterling blinked, utterly disarmed and visibly relieved that he wasn't going to be shot in an alley. Why, thank you, Mr. Blackwood. Might we get a photograph? Of course, Dante agreed smoothly. He stood next to the editor, holding one end of a comically large novelty check. It was the first oversized novelty check in the city's history, an invention Olivia had insisted upon for maximum visual impact in the morning papers. Flashbulbs erupted. Dante looked like a devastatingly handsome hero. Sterling looked like a grateful sidekick. As the editor scurried away, Dante turned to Olivia. A giant cardboard check. Really? It frames well in black and white, Olivia smirked, marking a line off her clipboard. You did beautifully. You didn't threaten a single person. The night is young, Dante murmured. Before Olivia could redirect him, the ballroom band transitioned into a slow, Sweeping jazz number. Dante didn't ask for permission. He smoothly took the clipboard from her hands, handed it to a passing waiter, and stepped into her personal space. He offered his hand. Olivia looked at his calloused palm. She was a professional. She managed crises. She did not dance with notorious mob bosses who could end her life with a nod. But as she looked up into his intense, blue eyes, she realized the narrative was completely slipping out of her control. Just one dance, Mr. Blackwood, Olivia said, placing her hand in his. For the cameras. Dante pulled her onto the dance floor, his hand resting firmly on the small of her back. He moved with the same fluid, lethal grace he used in a street fight, guiding her effortlessly across the polished marble. The entire room seemed to fade away, the chatter of politicians and the popping of flashbulbs drowned out by the heavy, rhythmic thud of his heart against her chest. You saved my life in that basement, Isabella, Dante murmured, using the name she had transmigrated into. He looked down at her, the coldness in his eyes entirely replaced by a burning, fascinated heat. But you've done more than that. You've given me an empire I don't have to defend with blood. Bullets are a depreciating asset, Dante, Olivia breathed, acutely aware of how close his lips were to hers. Influence appreciates. You are the most brilliant, terrifying woman I have ever met, Dante confessed, his grip tightening slightly on her waist. Maroney is finished. The mayor is in my pocket. And tomorrow, I will be the darling of the front page. He leaned in, his breath brushing her ear. Tell me, my spin doctor. What is our next headline? Chapter 5. The next headline, Olivia replied, stepping back from the dance floor and smoothing her emerald gown, is going to be you receiving the key to the city. Dante let out a low, genuinely amused laugh. The mayor has spent 3 years trying to build a federal case against me, Olivia. He will hand me a signed arrest warrant before he hands me the key to the city. He will hand you whatever I tell him to, Olivia corrected smoothly. Because Mayor Harrison is a politician, Dante. And politicians are just businessmen who trade in optics instead of liquor. On Monday morning, the Blackwood Syndicate paid a visit to City Hall. They did not kick the doors down. They did not bribe the guards. Dante walked through the front entrance wearing a sharp, pinstriped suit, looking entirely legitimate. Marco and Tommy walked behind him, carrying sleek leather briefcases instead of violin cases. They looked deeply uncomfortable without their heavy artillery, constantly adjusting their ties. Olivia led the vanguard, marching past the mayor's terrified secretary without breaking her stride. She opened the heavy oak doors to the mayor's office and stepped inside. Mayor Harrison, a balding, portly man who sweated profusely even in the winter, dropped his pen. Blackwood, the mayor gasped, reaching instinctively for the telephone. You can't just barge in here. I have a police detail right outside. Cancel them, Arthur, Dante commanded softly, stepping into the room and closing the door with a quiet, definitive click. The sheer, oppressive weight of his presence sucked the air out of the room. He didn't raise his voice, but the mayor instantly froze. Mr. Mayor, Olivia greeted cheerfully, taking a seat directly across from his desk. We are here to discuss your upcoming re-election campaign. The mayor blinked, his eyes darting between the terrifying mob boss and the woman sitting comfortably in his office. My campaign? I am running on an anti-corruption platform. If anyone sees you in here, my poll numbers will plummet. Your poll numbers are already in the gutter, Arthur, Olivia said, opening her leather satchel. She pulled out a pristine manila folder and slid it across the mahogany desk. But they are about to get significantly worse. Harrison opened the folder. Inside were crisp, black and white photographs of the mayor shaking hands with Don Maroney outside the very same illegal gambling ring that Maroney operated near Pier 4. The next photo showed the mayor accepting a very thick, unlabeled envelope. The blood drained from the mayor's face. Where did you get these? This is a fabrication. I will have you arrested for extortion. It's not extortion, Arthur. Extortion is a crime. Olivia smiled, tapping her manicured fingernail against the desk. This is opposition research. If these photos make their way to the Chronicle, your political career is over. You'll be indicted by Friday. What do you want? The mayor whispered, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket to mop his brow. Money? Protection. Mr. Blackwood is a legitimate philanthropist, Olivia corrected, her tone completely even. We want you to publicly recognize his contributions to urban renewal. This Friday at the steps of City Hall, you are going to award Dante Blackwood the key to the city for his outstanding commitment to the orphanage. Dante leaned against the bookshelf, watching Olivia work. He had tortured men, broken bones, and burned buildings to the ground to secure political leverage. This woman had just brought the most powerful man in the city to his knees with 3 photographs and a polite smile. "I can't," the mayor whimpered. "Maroney will kill me." Maroney is currently fighting a scandal involving a showgirl, an angry wife, and the Catholic Church, Olivia pointed out. "He is financially bleeding and politically toxic. If you stand with him, you sink with him. If you stand with Mr. Blackwood, you align yourself with the city's greatest benefactor. You will look like a visionary." The mayor stared at the photos, then looked at Dante. "The key to the city. That's all. And a tax abatement for the newly formed Blackwood Logistics Corporation," Olivia added brightly, standing up. "My assistant will send the paperwork over this afternoon. A pleasure doing business with you, Arthur." As they walked out of City Hall, Marco leaned over to Tommy. "I didn't even have to break his fingers," the enforcer whispered in awe. "She just talked to him, and he broke his own fingers." Chapter 6. With the mayor officially in Dante's pocket, the Blackwood Syndicate began aggressively transitioning their illicit operations into legally gray, entirely untouchable corporate entities. The speakeasies were rebranded as exclusive members-only jazz clubs. The bootlegged liquor was imported through a newly acquired, fully licensed pharmaceutical company, prescribed strictly for medicinal nerves, of course. Maroney, desperate and losing territory by the hour, made a foolish mistake. He sent his goons to physically intimidate the Blackwood's flagship club, the Obsidian Room. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Olivia was sitting in a velvet booth, going over the club's new marketing budget, when the front doors were violently kicked open. 3 Maroney enforcers stomped in. The leader, a man named Vinny the Razor, marched up to the bar and aggressively knocked over a row of crystal highball glasses. They shattered loudly across the floor. "This joint is officially under Maroney protection," Vinny bellowed to the terrified daytime staff. "You pay us 30% of the till by Friday, or this place burns to the ground." Normally, this was the part where Dante's men would emerge from the back room with shotguns and paint the walls with Vinny's blood. Instead, Marco stepped out of the manager's office. He was wearing a sharp suit and holding a clipboard. He looked deeply irritated. "Excuse me," Marco said, marching up to the thugs. "Do you know how much Baccarat crystal costs? You are destroying company property." Vinny blinked, genuinely confused. He pulled back his coat, revealing a heavy revolver tucked into his waistband. "Are you deaf, Blackwood? I said we're taking over." Olivia sighed, sliding out of her booth. She walked over, holding a thick stack of legal documents she had prepared with the syndicate's newly retained corporate lawyers. "Vincent the Razor Moretti?" Olivia asked, stepping between Marco and the armed thug. "Yeah. Who's asking?" Vinny sneered. "I am the Director of Public Relations and Legal Affairs for Blackwood Hospitality Group," Olivia said smoothly. She slapped the stack of papers directly against Vinny's chest. "You have just been served." Vinny instinctively grabbed the papers, looking down at them in absolute bewilderment. "Served? Served what?" "A bullet. A cease and desist order, citing tortious interference with a registered business entity," Olivia explained, crossing her arms. "Furthermore, the second document is a temporary restraining order signed by Judge Callahan, who, by the way, loves our medicinal gin. If you or any Maroney employee steps within 500 feet of a Blackwood establishment, you will be held in contempt of court and remanded to federal prison without bail." Vinny stared at the legal jargon. He was a man who understood brass knuckles and lead pipes. He did not understand injunctions. I don't care about paper," Vinny shouted, trying to regain his menacing aura. "I'm telling you to pay up. And I'm telling you that this establishment is fully insured against vandalism, and any further damage will result in a civil lawsuit that will completely bankrupt Don Maroney," Olivia replied, her tone dipping into her uncompromising, "I am not asking voice. Marco, please hand Mr. Moretti the itemized bill for the shattered crystal." Marco dutifully pulled a sheet from his clipboard and handed it to the bewildered thug. "That's $300, Vinny. Payable to the Blackwood Foundation." "You guys are crazy," Vinny whispered, looking around the pristine club, completely unnerved by the lack of violence. If they had shot at him, he would have shot back. But being handed an itemized invoice and a restraining order broke his brain. "Have a lovely afternoon, Vincent," Olivia smiled. "If the invoice isn't paid by Monday, we will garnish it directly from the Maroney Syndicate's offshore accounts." Vinny backed away, clutching the legal documents like they were radioactive, and scrambled out the front door with his men. Marco watched them flee, then turned to Olivia, shaking his head in absolute wonder. I used to think a Tommy gun was the scariest thing in the world, Marco said, checking off a box on his clipboard. But a civil lawsuit? That's just cruel, Miss Rossi. Chapter 7. Don Maroney, pushed to the brink of financial ruin by a relentless barrage of injunctions, health code violations and public scandals, finally snapped. He decided to abandon the legal battlefield and return to what he knew best, lead and gunpowder. It was a Friday night. Dante and Olivia were leaving an upscale Italian restaurant in the theater district. It was supposed to be a working dinner to discuss the acquisition of a shipping company, but Dante had spent the last 2 hours staring at Olivia in the candlelight, completely ignoring his veal. As they stepped out onto the rain-slicked pavement, a black Packard sedan screeched around the corner. The back windows rolled down, revealing the unmistakable silhouette of 3 Thompson submachine guns. "Get down!" Dante roared. He didn't draw his own weapon immediately. Instead, he lunged forward, wrapping his massive arms around Olivia and tackling her behind a sturdy brass fire hydrant just as the street erupted into a deafening hail of bullets. Glass shattered, brickwork exploded, and civilians screamed, diving for cover. Dante shielded Olivia entirely with his own body, his heavy wool overcoat absorbing the shower of debris. His ice blue eyes were utterly lethal as he reached inside his jacket for his M1911 pistol. "Stay here," Dante commanded, his voice a terrifying, quiet rasp over the gunfire. "I will end them." He prepared to return fire and paint the street with Maroney's men. "Wait," Olivia shouted, grabbing his wrist. Dante stared at her, genuinely bewildered. "Olivia, they are shooting at us. This is the part where I shoot back. If you shoot back, it's a gang war. If you don't, it's an unprovoked assassination attempt on a prominent philanthropist." Olivia yelled over the sound of a shattering street lamp. She reached into her clutch purse, pulled out a silver whistle, and blew 3 sharp, piercing notes. Across the street, hiding behind a parked delivery truck, a photographer from the Daily Tribune, whom Olivia had anonymously tipped off 20 minutes ago regarding Dante's dinner reservations, leapt out and raised his camera. Flash. "Look frightened," Olivia ordered Dante, grabbing his lapels. "I don't know how to look frightened," Dante growled, ducking as a bullet chipped the fire hydrant. "Then look intensely protective." Olivia adjusted on the fly, burying her face into his chest and clinging to his suit. Dante didn't have to fake that. He wrapped his arms tightly around her, glaring at the drive-by shooters with a look of absolute, righteous fury. The photographer's flashbulbs popped in rapid succession, capturing the exact moment the devastatingly handsome businessman heroically shielded his innocent companion from crazed, violent thugs. Realizing they were being photographed and that Dante wasn't returning fire, the Maroney hitmen panicked. The driver slammed on the gas, and the Packard sped off into the night. The street fell eerily silent, save for the sound of rain and breaking glass. Dante slowly helped Olivia to her feet, his hands running frantically over her arms and shoulders to check for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they hit you?" "I'm perfectly fine," Olivia said, brushing the brick dust off her skirt. She looked across the street and gave a discreet nod to the trembling photographer, who was clutching his camera like it was made of solid gold. She turned back to the terrifying crime boss, who was currently fighting a very visible battle between his urge to commit murder and his profound relief that she was safe. "By tomorrow morning," Olivia said, her eyes shining with absolute corporate triumph, "the mayor will be forced to issue federal arrest warrants for the entire Maroney family. You cannot shoot up a street in the theater district without public outrage. And we, Mr. Blackwood, are the victims." Dante looked at the bullet-riddled restaurant, the fleeing paparazzi, and then down at the brilliant, entirely unhinged woman standing before him. "You called the press to an ambush," Dante whispered. "You weaponized a drive-by shooting." "Never let a good crisis go to waste, Dante," Olivia smirked. Chapter 8. The front page of the Saturday Tribune featured a massive, breathtaking photograph of Dante Blackwood shielding Olivia from the gunfire. The headline read, "Nightmare in the Theater District. Philanthropist targeted by mob violence." Public sympathy was staggering. The police, under massive pressure from terrified high society voters, raided 3 of Maroney's remaining warehouses before noon. To capitalize on the momentum, Olivia booked Dante for an exclusive, sit-down radio interview with the city's most respected broadcaster, Walter Hayes. "Remember," Olivia instructed, pacing the green room of the radio station while Dante adjusted his tie. You are deeply shaken. You are a man who simply wants to invest in his city, and you are horrified that the criminal underworld has targeted you for trying to clean up the streets. I am the criminal underworld, Olivia, Dante pointed out, his voice dry. Not anymore. You are a venture capitalist with aggressive security protocols, Olivia corrected. She walked up to him, adjusting the lapels of his charcoal suit. She let her hands linger for a fraction of a second longer than was strictly professional. Keep your voice low. Use pauses for emotional effect. And if he asks about Moroni, do not threaten to bury him. I will simply express my profound disappointment in his life choices, Dante promised, his ice blue eyes gleaming with dark amusement as he looked down at her. Wish me luck, spin doctor. The interview was a masterclass in manipulation. Dante's naturally raspy, quiet voice translated beautifully over the radio waves. He sounded somber, reflective, and deeply noble. When Hayes asked about the shootout, Dante masterfully pivoted the conversation. The real tragedy, Walter, Dante murmured into the microphone, is not the damage to my suit, or the fear I felt for my own life. It is the realization that the good citizens of this city cannot even enjoy a plate of pasta without fear of gang violence. I am calling upon the mayor to double the police budget. In fact, the Blackwood Foundation will personally match the city's funds to put more officers on the street. In the recording booth, Olivia pumped her fist in the air. Marco, who was standing guard by the door, shook his head in disbelief. He's offering to buy cops. Officially. Out in the open. It's beautiful. When the on-air light clicked off, Hayes enthusiastically shook Dante's hand, thanking him for his bravery. Dante walked out of the booth and straight up to Olivia. He didn't say a word. He simply backed her against the wall of the green room, placed a hand flat against the plaster beside her head, and leaned in until his lips were a millimeter from her ear. How did I do? Dante whispered, his voice vibrating with that lethal, coiled energy. Flawless, Olivia breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs. The adrenaline of the PR victory was rapidly blurring into something much more dangerous. You have the entire city eating out of the palm of your hand. I don't care about the city, Dante murmured, his gaze dropping to her lips. I only care about the approval of my PR director. Chapter 9. Don Moroni was bleeding territory, money, and political allies. His hitmen were in jail, his casinos were boarded up, and his wife had filed for a highly publicized divorce after the showgirl photos leaked. Desperate men do desperate things. If he couldn't kill Dante with bullets, he would try to kill him with ink. On Wednesday morning, a sleazy independent tabloid called the Underworld Informer hit the streets with a scandalous, blaring headline. The Romeo and Juliet of crime. Blackwood's secret alliance with the Rossi crime family. The article exposed Olivia's true identity. It revealed that Olivia Vance, PR director, was actually Isabella Rossi, the daughter of Don Rossi, Dante's oldest and most bitter rival. The article accused Dante of forging a secret, unholy alliance with the Rossi family to monopolize the city's crime rings, proving he was no philanthropist at all. Dante slammed the tabloid onto his mahogany desk. His eyes were murderous. I will find the rat who printed this, and I will remove his fingers, Dante growled, already reaching for his coat. Marco, warm up the cars. Sit down, Dante, Olivia commanded, not looking up from her coffee. Dante froze. Olivia, they are exposing you. Your father will see this. If Don Rossi realizes you are alive and working for me, he will send his entire syndicate to our front door. Good. Let him, Olivia said, taking a sip of her coffee. She picked up the tabloid and admired the grainy, stolen photograph of her and Dante dancing at the charity gala. Moroni thinks he just dropped a bomb on our narrative. He doesn't realize he just gave us the ultimate romantic spin. Romantic spin? Marco echoed, utterly lost. People love philanthropists, Dante. But do you know what they love even more? Star-crossed lovers, Olivia said, her eyes gleaming with ruthless inspiration. A tragique romance. The innocent daughter of a cruel mob boss, fleeing her violent family, only to find sanctuary and true love in the arms of a reformed businessman. Dante stopped putting his coat on. He stared at her, the anger slowly bleeding out, replaced by a deep, intense fascination. You want to confirm the story? I want to hijack it, Olivia corrected. She walked over to the desk, her mind operating 10 steps ahead. We don't deny that I am Isabella Rossi. We own it. We tell the Tribune that I fled my father's violent syndicate because I wanted a peaceful life. And when Maroney's men tried to execute me, you stepped in and saved me. She tapped the photo of them dancing. It explains why you've suddenly turned to philanthropy. It wasn't just a business move. It was for love, Olivia smirked. You are trying to build a legitimate empire to give the woman you love a safe life away from the mob. My father will look like a tyrant trying to tear us apart. Maroney will look like a petty monster trying to ruin true love. Dante walked slowly around the desk. He stopped directly in front of her, the air crackling with sudden, intense gravity. Is it just a spin, Olivia? Dante asked, his voice a low rough rumble. He reached out, his calloused thumb gently tracing the line of her jaw. Is it just a narrative for the papers? Olivia looked up into those freezing, beautiful blue eyes. For the first time since transmigrating into this terrifying world, the legendary fixer didn't have a pre-planned script. I suppose, Olivia whispered, leaning slightly into his touch. We will have to give the press a very convincing performance to find out. Chapter 10. The press conference was held on the pristine marble steps of the newly funded Blackwood Orphanage. It was a calculated choice of venue. You cannot aggressively interrogate a woman while standing in front of 50 orphans holding thank you balloons. Olivia stood at the podium wearing a tailored, pale cream dress that screamed innocence, vulnerability, and quiet strength. Dante stood exactly one step behind her. Close enough to project absolute protection, but respectful enough to let her hold the floor. He was wearing his signature charcoal suit, his ice blue eyes scanning the crowd with the vigilance of a guard dog. The reporters were practically frothing at the mouth, shouting questions over one another. Miss Rossi, is it true you fled the Rossi syndicate? Mr. Blackwood, did you kidnap the Don's daughter? Are the rival families going to war over your romance? Olivia raised a single, elegantly gloved hand. The crowd instantly fell silent. She possessed the gravity of a seasoned Hollywood fixer, but she was playing the role of the tragic mob princess to absolute perfection. My name is Isabella, Olivia began, her voice projecting clearly over the microphones. She injected just the right amount of a manufactured tremor into her tone. And yes, it is true. I was born into the Rossi family, but I did not choose the life of violence that my father built. Camera flashes erupted like a lightning storm. For years, I watched the bloodshed. I saw the toll it took on this beautiful city. Olivia continued, placing a hand over her heart. When I tried to leave, to seek a quiet life, my father's men were sent to silence me. I was terrified. I had nowhere to turn. She paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. She slowly turned to look at Dante. The crime boss looked back at her, his expression entirely unreadable to the crowd, but Olivia could see the dark, dangerous amusement dancing in his eyes. But then, Olivia whispered into the microphone, leaning back slightly so Dante's large hand could rest reassuringly on her waist. I found sanctuary. Mr. Blackwood did not see me as a pawn in a gang war. He saw a woman in need of help. He showed me that true power does not come from fear, but from what you can build. He is building a foundation for this city, and he is building a safe haven for me. The reporters scribbled frantically. Half the female journalists in the front row were visibly tearing up. Don Maroney and my father wish to destroy Dante because he represents everything they are not, Olivia stated, her voice hardening into a brilliant display of righteous defiance. They traffic in shadows. We are stepping into the light. And if they wish to wage a war against a legitimate businessman simply because he chose to protect the woman he loves, then let the public judge who the real criminals are. Mr. Blackwood, shouted a reporter from the Chronicle. What do you have to say to Don Rossi? Dante stepped up to the microphone. He didn't yell. He didn't make a grandiose threat. He leaned in, his voice a low, terrifying rasp that sent shivers down the spine of every person in the plaza. Isabella is under my protection now, Dante murmured. If a single hair on her head is harmed, I will not wage a gang war in the streets. I will use the full extent of my corporate legal team to dismantle her father's empire, seize his assets, and leave him bankrupt in federal court. He paused, looking directly into the camera lenses. I am a philanthropist now, Dante smirked. I don't break legs. I break monopolies. Chapter 11. By the end of the week, the Blackwood-Rossi romance was the most lucrative public relations goldmine the city had ever seen. The public was absolutely obsessed with the reformed bad boy and his brave, tragic bride-to-be. The Obsidian Room had lines wrapping around the block. I don't understand, Marco said, standing behind the mahogany bar and staring at the cash register. We tripled the price of the gin. We watered it down. And they are still buying it. They are literally throwing money at us. It's not just gin anymore, Marco. It's an experience, Olivia corrected, walking past with her clipboard. She pointed to a chalkboard menu behind the bar. They aren't buying bootleg alcohol. They are buying the Romeo's Ruin signature cocktail. It comes with a little paper heart on the rim. Boss, Tommy whispered, approaching Dante in the VIP booth. He was holding a small, elegantly branded matchbook that read the Blackwood Rossi Sanctuary. A woman just asked me to sign her menu because she read in the paper that I was the loyal enforcer who orchestrated the midnight escape. I don't even know how to write cursive. Just print your name, Tommy, and smile. Dante sighed, sipping his scotch. He watched Olivia orchestrating the chaos of the club, a profound sense of awe settling in his chest. In less than a month, she had completely immunized him from police raids, bankrupted one rival, and turned his illicit speakeasy into the most profitable, highly photographed venue in the state. Suddenly, a waiter nervously approached the VIP booth holding a telephone on a long extension cord. Mr. Blackwood, sir, the waiter stammered. There is a phone call for Miss Rossi. He says he's her father. The air in the booth instantly dropped to freezing. Marco and Tommy instinctively reached into their jackets. Dante's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing as he took the receiver. Don Rossi, Dante said softly. Put my daughter on the phone, Blackwood, before I burn your shiny new orphanage to the ground. The raspy, furious voice of the rival boss barked through the earpiece. Olivia walked over, noting the tension. Dante handed her the phone, his body coiled and ready for violence. Hello, father, Olivia said breezily. Isabella, what is this madness in the papers? Don Rossi roared. You are embarrassing the family, making a mockery of our business. You will pack your bags and return to the compound immediately, or I will send 50 men to retrieve you. You won't send anyone, father, Olivia replied, checking her manicured nails. If you attack Dante, you make me a grieving widow. The public will demand your execution, and the mayor will be forced to mobilize the National Guard to appease the voters. You are completely paralyzed by my popularity. Silence stretched over the line. Rossi was a man who understood territory, not optics. However, Olivia continued smoothly, entirely unfazed. If you publicly endorse our relationship and announce a peace treaty between our families, I will ensure the Tribune runs a feature on your fatherly mercy. Furthermore, Blackwood Logistics will offer your import company a highly favorable, completely legal shipping contract that will double your revenue by Q3. Double my revenue? Rossi repeated, the anger momentarily derailed by the prospect of untaxed capital. Bullets cost money, father. PR prints it, Olivia smiled. I'll have my corporate lawyers send the peace treaty to your office on Monday. Do not call this number again unless you are RSVPing to a charity gala. She hung up the phone and handed it back to the stunned waiter. Dante stared at her, completely captivated. You just negotiated a mob peace treaty using a shipping contract and a newspaper feature. Synergy, Dante, Olivia winked. Chapter 12. Despite the overwhelming success of their campaign, there was still one loose end. The sleazy journalist from the Underworld Informer, who had originally tried to leak Olivia's identity. His name was Fletcher, and he was a rat-faced man who made a living extorting people with half-truths. Unhappy that his expose had backfired and turned Dante into a romantic hero, Fletcher decided to ambush them as they left a meeting at the bank. Miss Rossi, Mr. Blackwood, Fletcher shouted, blocking the sidewalk with a notepad. Fletcher, Informer. Come on, the public isn't stupid. This whole romance is a sham to cover up a merger, isn't it? Tell me, Blackwood, how many men did you have to kill to force Don Rossi to the negotiating table? Marco cracked his knuckles, stepping forward. Dante raised a hand, stopping his enforcer. He looked at Olivia. She gave him a subtle, encouraging nod. Use your words. Dante stepped up to the journalist. He didn't pull a gun. He didn't grab the man by the collar. He simply loomed over him, utilizing his 6'2" frame and the chilling, dead-eyed stare of a natural-born killer. Mr. Fletcher, Dante murmured, his voice a silken threat. I am a legitimate businessman, which means I no longer handle grievances in dark alleys. Fletcher smirked, feeling emboldened. So what are you gonna do? Sue me? Yes, Dante said simply. Fletcher's smirk faltered. But I won't just sue you for defamation, Dante continued, stepping closer until Fletcher had to crane his neck to look up at him. I will buy the building your printing press operates in, and I will evict you. I will purchase the debts you owe to your bookies and call them in immediately. I will hire a team of private investigators to audit every tax return you have filed for the past decade, and I will personally hand the discrepancies to the IRS. Dante leaned in, his breath brushing the terrified journalist's face. I will not leave a mark on your body, Fletcher. But I will dismantle your entire life using nothing but legally binding paperwork and aggressive corporate acquisitions. When I am finished, you will not be able to afford a pencil, let alone a printing press. Fletcher was sweating profusely. His notepad was visibly trembling. He realized with absolute horror that a mob boss with a lawyer was infinitely more terrifying than a mob boss with a gun. I think I have the wrong story, Fletcher squeaked. I think you do, Dante agreed, stepping back and straightening his cuffs. Have a productive afternoon. As Fletcher sprinted away down the street, Olivia leaned against the brick wall of the bank, fanning herself with a manila envelope. Dante, Olivia breathed, genuinely impressed. That was the most incredibly romantic thing I have ever heard. Dante turned to her, his sharp features softening into a devastatingly handsome, wicked smile. I'm learning spin doctor, Dante murmured, offering her his arm. Now, I believe we have an engagement ring to shop for. The press is expecting a proposal, and I would hate to disappoint our audience. Chapter 13. The grand opening of the rebuilt Blackwood Community Center at Pier 4 was the most heavily attended public event of the year. The mayor was there, sweating profusely but smiling for the cameras. The chief of police was there, enjoying a plate of complimentary hors d'oeuvres. And naturally, every major newspaper in the state had sent their top photographers. Olivia stood near the grand ribbon-cutting archway, mentally ticking boxes off her master PR schedule. Ribbon cut? Check. Mayor's endorsement speech? Check. Orphan choir performance? Check. The only thing left was the grand finale. Dante stepped up to the podium. He wore a flawless three-piece charcoal suit, a crisp white pocket square, and the quiet, undeniable aura of a king surveying his kingdom. He did not look at the mayor, nor the reporters. He looked directly at Olivia, who was standing just off stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Dante's low, raspy voice echoed through the microphone, instantly silencing the crowd. A month ago, this pier was ashes. Many of you thought the violence in this city would consume us all. But from those ashes, we built a foundation. He stepped away from the podium, ignoring the microphone entirely, and walked slowly toward Olivia. The crowd parted. The photographers scrambled, flashbulbs popping in a chaotic frenzy as they realized the script had just been violently thrown out the window. I am a man who was raised in the shadows, Dante murmured, his voice now only loud enough for her and the front row of reporters to hear. He stopped mere inches from her. I did not believe in peace. I did not believe in redemption. And I certainly did not believe in love. He reached into his suit jacket. Marco and Tommy, standing at the edge of the stage, immediately snapped to attention, their hands over their hearts as if watching a national anthem. Dante dropped to one knee. A collective gasp echoed through the crowd. 3 female reporters in the second row actually squealed. Dante opened a velvet box, revealing an emerald-cut diamond the size of a quail egg. It was flawlessly clear, set in platinum, and terrifyingly expensive. But Dante wasn't looking at the ring or the cameras. He was looking up into Olivia's eyes, and the sheer, burning devotion radiating from him stole the breath right out of her lungs. This wasn't a PR stunt anymore. Isabella Rossi, Dante whispered, entirely ignoring her fabricated identity and speaking directly to the brilliant, ruthless soul behind her eyes. You gave me an empire of light. You taught me that my hands can build instead of break. You are the architect of my salvation, and the absolute ruler of my heart. He held the ring out, his ice blue eyes softening into something devastatingly vulnerable. Will you do me the absolute honor of becoming my wife, and my partner in all things? Olivia, the legendary Hollywood fixer who had never lost her composure during a crisis, felt genuine tears prick her eyes. She looked at the lethal crime boss kneeling before her. A man who had traded his Tommy gun for tax abatements just to keep her safe. Yes, Olivia breathed, her voice trembling just enough for the cameras, but the radiant, genuine smile breaking across her face was entirely real. Yes, Dante. Absolutely. Dante slipped the heavy diamond onto her finger, stood up, and pulled her flush against his chest. He kissed her deeply, passionately, completely ignoring the blinding explosion of paparazzi flashbulbs illuminating them like a lightning storm. Behind them, Marco wiped a single tear from his eye. Boss is so good at corporate synergy, he whispered to Tommy. Chapter 14. Maroney Empire crumbles. Notorious crime boss indicted on 47 counts of tax evasion. Blackwood Logistics acquires remaining port assets at auction. Olivia sat in the newly renovated boardroom of Blackwood Logistics, sipping a cup of artisanal coffee and reading the morning edition of the Tribune. It was over. Don Maroney hadn't been killed in a hail of bullets. He hadn't been blown up in a warehouse. He had been taken down by a team of federal accountants that Olivia had anonymously tipped off. They found 3 ledgers detailing a decade of unpaid income taxes on his illegal gambling rings. Al Capone style. The Rossi family, terrified by Maroney's sudden, bureaucratic demise, had eagerly signed the peace treaty and transitioned their bootlegging operation into a fully licensed olive oil import business. Dante walked into the boardroom, looking at the newspaper over her shoulder. 47 counts, Dante mused, pouring himself a cup of coffee. He will be in federal prison for the rest of his natural life. And I didn't have to fire a single shot. You really didn't, Olivia smiled, turning her chair to face him. How is the transition going in the shipping department? Marco is thriving as the vice president of domestic freight, Dante replied, leaning against the edge of the mahogany conference table. He just successfully negotiated a union contract with the dockworkers without breaking a single kneecap. He said he simply used his, I am not asking voice and presented them with a highly competitive benefits package. And Tommy? Tommy is enjoying his role as head of corporate security. He confiscated 3 unauthorized firearms from the warehouse staff yesterday and replaced them with heavy-duty flashlights and a whistle. Dante said, a dark chuckle rumbling in his chest. He is taking the zero-tolerance workplace violence policy very seriously. Olivia stood up, walking over to her newly minted fiancé. The massive diamond on her finger caught the morning light. We did it, Olivia breathed, wrapping her arms around his neck. No more speakeasies. No more gang wars. You own the shipping lanes, the hospitality group, and half the real estate in the commercial district. You are officially the most powerful, legally untouchable man in the city. No, Dante corrected smoothly, wrapping his large hands around her waist and pulling her close. We own the city, Mrs. Blackwood. Well, the chairman thinks you've earned a very long lunch break, Olivia murmured, tracing the line of his sharp jawline. I am a philanthropist, Olivia, Dante whispered, his ice blue eyes darkening with that familiar, intense heat as he leaned down. I am always eager to give back to the community. Epilogue. 2 years later, the city was in a golden age of peace and prosperity. The Blackwood Foundation had built 3 hospitals, a sprawling public library, and heavily subsidized the public transportation network. Crime was at an all-time low, primarily because anyone foolish enough to start a gang quickly found themselves buried under an avalanche of civil lawsuits, aggressive audits, and terrifyingly polite cease and desist orders delivered by Marco. It was a quiet Sunday morning in the Blackwood penthouse, a stunning, sun-drenched apartment overlooking the city skyline. Olivia was sitting at the marble kitchen island, wearing a silk robe and reviewing a stack of architectural blueprints for their newest real estate development. Dante stood at the stove, wearing crisp suit trousers and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The ruthless, terrifying ruler of the underworld was currently using his unparalleled focus and steady hands to flip a perfectly golden blueberry pancake. He plated the breakfast, poured fresh coffee, and set the tray down in front of her. The Chronicle is running an editorial on you tomorrow, Dante noted, sliding the Sunday paper across the island. Olivia glanced at it. Oh, let me guess. The Angel of the Docks again? Close. The visionary matriarch. Dante smiled, sitting on the stool next to hers and pressing a kiss to her temple. He looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the sprawling city below. Ships were moving through the docks, trucks were crossing the bridges, and the streets were safe. And it all belonged to them. Do you ever miss it? Olivia asked softly, leaning her head against his shoulder. The danger? The absolute power of the gun. Dante looked at the woman who had transmigrated into his basement, critiqued his murder aesthetic, and completely rewritten his destiny with a typewriter and a wicked smile. He thought of his enemies, rotting in prison cells, while he ate blueberry pancakes in a penthouse with the woman he worshipped. He picked up a pen from the island, twirling it effortlessly between his calloused fingers. Guns are loud, messy, and entirely unimaginative, Dante murmured, his low, raspy voice filled with absolute, unbroken peace. He placed the pen gently in Olivia's hand and kissed her knuckles. I much prefer the spin doctor's approach. After all, the pen is significantly deadlier. That's where this love story ends for now. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more romantic twists. Tell me in the comments what will you have done. Until the next story, keep craving romance.